Today, I'm checking out a very weird 3x3. Of course it can turn, but it also slides? That's insane. It's called, wait for it, the sliding 3x3. Yeah, Jonathan really thought outside the box to come up with that name. If this video came out like 6 years ago, all of you would have known who Jonathan is, but it's now what, 2025? So most of y'all probably have no clue. He is NKCubed and he designed the sliding 3x3 back in 2018. When I saw the first prototype all those years ago, I was blown away. Since then, I've always wanted to try it out, and it seems a lot of cubers agree since NKCubed's review of the sliding 3x3 and a few more of Jonathan's puzzle has amassed an astounding 6 million views. I honestly think it's completely deserved. It's genuinely a great video. I love seeing content like this blow up because it shows that more and more cubers are getting interested in the crazy world of puzzles beyond the WCA events. While I personally have never been a speed cuber, many of the newer puzzle designers I see creating fun and unique cubes started out just speed cubing. If you want to keep seeing mind-blowing puzzles, like and subscribe. Personally, I'm really excited to finally review this puzzle after wanting one for so many years. Although, this isn't my first rodeo with NKCubed's series of sliding puzzles. I reviewed his sliding 1x2x3 for the 4th ever video on this channel, and that was a really fun twist on a trivial puzzle. I also printed NKCubed's sliding super square one a month later, but that one unfortunately may have slightly had some issues with pieces falling out. The sliding 3x3 is thankfully a much more advanced design, so I think it'll turn pretty well. I actually find the mechanism to be really interesting, and in just a bit I'll show you how it works. Okay, so I want a sliding 3x3. How do I get one? For a few years, there actually was no way to get one. Then, in 2021, the sliding 3x3 became available for the first time in Yevgeny's store, sold with NKCubed's permission. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be buying this version. You might assume it's because of the price, but actually the price might not be too unreasonable. I'll explain later, but the main reason I don't want this version of the sliding 3x3 is because it's printed using SLS. SLS is a completely different type of 3D printing from the FDM printers we've gotten accustomed to using at home over the past decade. I am not personally a fan of SLS puzzles. I think they feel unnaturally light, and I hate the sandpapery sound and feeling when you make turns. Some of them also release an unfathomable amount of loose powder anytime you so much as breathe vaguely near them. I've also had an issue where after I had an SLS puzzle for many years, the lube decided to just retire. When I got this Mercedes cube back in 2018, it turned okay, and I remember solving it a few times. But a month ago, I decided to solve it again so I could put it in my display case, and oh my god, these circles are impossible to turn now. It took me a whole hour to solve this cube, which should never need more than a few minutes. So I'm just completely checked out of SLS at this point. Let's talk about the price. From a consumer's perspective, I believe the sliding 3x3 does not offer a $240 solving experience, straight up. But I really like the concept, so for me personally, the solve to price ratio doesn't necessarily matter as much. And puzzle stores don't operate based on that metric. Puzzles are typically priced based on the materials and time needed to create a finished copy. There are no home SLS printers, and getting parts printed by an SLS service has always been expensive. On top of that, building a sliding 3x3 involves gluing an unbelievable amount of magnets into it, which takes quite a bit of time. The sliding 3x3 really needs the magnets, otherwise it would just flop around uncontrollably, much like the one NKCubed reviewed. So if I print one, I'm envisioning spending quite a bit of time just dealing with magnets. Not exactly how I wanted to spend my afternoon, but honestly I'd probably still have more fun gluing magnets than using up an afternoon trying to solve the fractured curvicopter octahedron 3+2. Just look at this thing. I thought my chance to buy an FDM sliding 3x3 had finally come when Jonathan decided to sell off a lot of his collection. To my dismay, they were already all sold. In a surprising twist though, Jonathan instead offered to send me the files so I could make a sliding 3x3 for myself. This was very kind, thank you so much Jonathan. Of course I accepted, and he sent me the STLs back in January of 2022! Wow, have I really been sitting on this for 3 years? That's crazy even for me to think about. It's not strictly true though. Back when I first got the files, I printed all of the parts on my Artillery Sidewinder X1, but that printer's quality was not the best, so the pieces don't look that great, and I think the tolerances are all over the place. 2 years later, in January of 2024, I actually printed the same parts on a Prusa Mark IV, and these look much better. I was also working on another puzzle at the same time, the Sun Cuboid, and I put out a poll for which one you all wanted to see first. I'm sure when you voted on that poll you didn't expect to not see the losing puzzle for an entire year, and frankly neither did I, but here we are. I'm now finally building a sliding 3x3, of course using the Prusa parts, not the terrible ones. I'm first going to glue all the magnets into their slots. I think this is going to be really tedious because unfortunately with the way the holes came out, some of them are just a tiny bit too small for the magnets to fit. So I'm going to have to expand all of those holes and then glue in the magnets. I'll check back in once that's all taken care of. After quite a while, this is now officially the sliding 3x3M. Before I put it together, I really want to show you how the mechanism works. I think it's super cool. The inner circle is actually a sliding floppy cube, so a 3x3x1 with the height of a 3x3x3. All of the outer parts slide around on these rails, making all 3 layers mechanically identical. This is needed because the sliding 3x3 lets you swap lots of pieces that a regular 3x3 can't. For example, you can swap this edge with this center, or this corner with this edge, and in case it wasn't obvious, this is a cuboid-style puzzle, so you can't make a 90-degree vertical turn and then a horizontal turn. This inner sliding 3x3x1 is what I'm really impressed by. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything else similar to it. This weird looking piece is the core, and all 4 edges hook into it with this rail. The rail is special though because it's actually wider in the exact center. What this means is you can make vertical turns only when the edge and center are aligned and not anywhere else on the rail. And likewise, you can't slide along the rail if the edge is mid-turn. The last piece of the puzzle is, how do the floppy cube corners work? These are also, you guessed it, on rails. But they're more analogous to an actual train track rail. They can move up and down for the sliding move, or they can divert to make the vertical turn. I think that's really interesting. In essence, the sliding 3x3 is just 3 completely separate rails mechanisms, and credit where it's due to Jonathan, I think it's super creative and interesting. Okay, enough mechanism talk though, I'm going to put this thing together now. You might have noticed the sliding 3x3 doesn't have any screws holding it together, and this makes for an interesting assembly. The first 2/3 of the puzzle are simple to slide together, but I was a bit stumped at the very end. I didn't want to force anything too hard so as to not break anything, but it was difficult to decide what should be the last piece to go in. Eventually, I was able to figure out that if I lift a floppy cube edge a bit, I could just barely make enough room for the last floppy cube corner to slot in. After snapping the caps on, here I have an assembled sliding 3x3. So I'm going to sand it, sticker it, and then let's check out how it turns. Finally, the sliding 3x3 is all done. It really is crazy to me that after wanting a sliding 3x3 for 7 years, I finally have one in my collection. I think it looks really nice too. Jonathan's puzzles always had a certain very clean aesthetic that I've always been a fan of. I've had the sliding 3x3 for a few days now, and something I've actually found out is, turns out this is a really nice fidget toy. If I'm ever working from home and I have to sit through a boring meeting, I'll just have this with me and keep moving it back and forth. It's actually really satisfying. Unfortunately though, it's not a very good fidget spinner. Anyway, let's take a look at the turns that the sliding 3x3 can make. Of course, this inner floppy cube should stay in place, and then we can make these 3 turns of all these horizontal layers. These turn very well. I didn't lube this puzzle at all, and I'll show you why in a little bit, but these turns I've never had any issues with. And obviously the second move is the slides, which it can be a little finicky to get this inner floppy cube to line up with these outer pieces, but once you do so, the actual slide works very well and is very satisfying. And then the final turn, and also by far the worst one, is this vertical turn, which it's not great. It can be really hard to get the rails on the floppy cube corners to go into the correct track. Instead of the one to go up, it needs to go around. But honestly, I was way more worried about it back when I was assembling the puzzle. Now that I've broken the sliding 3x3 in a bit, it's way better to make these turns. And I've also figured out a technique to try and get them on the right rail. You might have noticed I'm actually holding the puzzle by very few spots. So I have one finger on this center and one finger on this center, and then I actually turn this layer using only these two edges as pressure points. So that kind of helps me make sure that the inner floppy cube corners are going into the right rails. I couldn't lube this puzzle because at any given time, a lot of the mechanism might be exposed. I mean, look, if I lubed this track, as soon as I make this slide, all the lube could just come out right here. And you'll notice as I keep turning it that a lot of the mechanism can just become exposed. So I really didn't want a messy puzzle with lube everywhere, so that's why I tried to just break it in as much as possible, but not actually lube it. And honestly, most of these vertical turns are okay. You also have to keep in mind that this puzzle is essentially 3 rails mechanisms built on top of each other, so definitely don't expect any corner cutting from any of the turns, but I'm okay with that. This is a cool and unique puzzle and I don't really need to be speed solving it, you know? What I want to try and do now is replicate the iconic thumbnail from NKCubed's video, the really crazy looking exploded view, which I'm a bit confused about because you might have noticed that any of the layers can only be offset by 1 cubie. But in that picture, it looks like they're offset by more than one, so I'm very interested to see how that's accomplished. Like even if I do this, I can't move this further up because it's only 1 off from this. Wait, does this mean I can actually move this corner 2 cubies past the center? Wait a second. Oh, that's so cool. Here's why this works. Back when I showed you the mechanism, you might have actually noticed that the inner floppy cube corners are mechanically not connected in any way to these centers. It's only these edges that are connected to the centers, and then the corners are only connected to the edges. So that's why, because these pieces are completely unconnected, they can actually be 2 away from each other. Wow, that's so cool. Okay, let's keep going. So I can bring this down, and then this down. Oh, here we are. This looks amazing. I saw this and I was sold. This is so good. Look at this. You can't actually make any turns in this position. I mean, just look, nothing lines up. But this position also really shows why I didn't lube the puzzle. Just look at how much of the mechanism is exposed in this state. If I were to have lubed this, then the entire puzzle would have become a gummy mess right now. Let's see if we can sandwich it back together. There we are, that's so satisfying. Even if this puzzle might be a little awkward to turn, it really makes up for it just by how satisfying every turn is once you actually make it. It's so nice. Something else I want to call out, because I think it's a really good design decision on Jonathan's part, is how he made sure that when the puzzle's all scrambled, you can relatively easily tell which pieces are supposed to go on which layer. Let's say I bring an entire 3x3x1 section down, and then I turn it over, and then I bring this back up. What you'll notice is the stickers actually don't cover the entire piece right here because these fillets are a bit wider. Whereas on these pieces, since there used to be a layer above these, they actually do cover the entire piece. So when the puzzle's scrambled, these fillets combined with the appropriate stickers actually make it much easier to tell on what layer your pieces are supposed to go into. It's a very nice quality of life improvement compared to Jonathan's earlier sliding puzzles. Just for fun, I want to try doing a checkerboard pattern just to see what it would look like. I wonder if it's possible to switch the top and bottom to get a true checkerboard. I might do that off camera and show you later, but for the time being, this is where I'm calling it. Could this technically be considered a 3x3x4, since technically you have 3 layers here, and then this is another layer. It just happens to go through the entire puzzle. Let me know in the comments if you would consider this a 3x3x4. Okay, after messing around for a while, I actually don't think you can have just 2 centers swapped on this, so the closest I could get to a true checkerboard is the white and yellow is all good. You can see that these are all alternating, but then the centers are still correct on the blue and green sides. But hey, even this I think still looks pretty cool. Okay, now let's take the sliding 3x3 outside and scramble it. Looking at this just now, I was wondering why only 4 colors were on the sides, and then I realized, well, yeah, of course, it scrambles like a cuboid, so it is just going to be blue, green, red, and orange on the sides. But anyway, this is a pretty cool looking scramble. If you want to see me solve the sliding 3x3, make sure you're subscribed. But for now, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.